Oh, Julian, Julian was one of the first people I saw when I walked into the Atlanta SNCC office. The SNCC office, I had left Swarthmore College, supposedly for 6 months. It becomes forever, but anyway. And so I had left there and gone down to see the national office with a colleague, Reggie Robinson. And so we went down, and he's saying we're going to the national office. So I think it's going to be this, like Urban League, rugs on the floor. It's going to be, I get there. It is this dirty kind of, really informal office. And I often talk about how when I first get there, I come to the 8.5 Raymond Street, and it's right near above a beauty shop. And so I see Reggie go to the front door, which was a plate glass window. And as he gets there, he sees this guy who is big, burly guy. And the burly guy is sweeping the stairs. And Reggie, they just clasp each other, and it's like long lost buddies. And the big burly guy says, "Hey, Captain, how you doing?" And da-da-da. And I'm thinking, oh, how nice, how egalitarian these folks are, because Reggie is hugging the janitor. And I did not know that this was James Foreman, the bigger-than-life executive secretary of SNCC. And because Foreman's thing was that you should always sweep the floors of the SNCC office, and that because nobody was too important to do anything that the organization needed, and that every job was really important. So then I get introduced to Foreman, and that's how I come in, because he finds out that I've taken leave of Swarthmore College. He figures I can write a literate sentence. I can type 90 words a minute, and I took what was then known as shorthand, which is, I always say, is like texting but with symbols. And so I become a secretary. Now, so when I then come in, I see Julian, and Julian always had the cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and he was always a two-finger typer. So he would tip-tap and type as quickly with the two fingers as I did with 90, with my little, I could type 90 words a minute. He was just, and he always looked very serious while he was doing these, the two-finger typing. Press releases, helping with the March on Washington. Well, no, I knew that he had helped with the March on Washington speech. I was not there when that happened. But all of this activity coming out of the communications department, and that was Julian and Dottie Zellner, it was Mary King, it was just a number of folks under Julian. But Julian was, he had a wicked sense of humor. So he would just be funny a lot of the time, too. But when he was doing those press releases, he was dead serious, Or when he was doing the monthly reports that went out to the Friends of SNCC, because it was a hub. That national office was absolutely a hub of all the Friends of SNCC offices all over the country, of our pro bono lawyers in New York or wherever they were. It was just the research department, the print department, everything was coming out of that. So Julian would always get information out about what we were doing and what our activities were. Do we need to cut while that? No. Okay. The other thing with Julian, what I remember about Julian, when I say wicked sense of humor, he loved music. That was the other thing. And so he loved R&B. There was Pascal's was right down the street. And Pascal's didn't love us the way Wilson's did. Wilson's, the head of Wilson's restaurant, would give us free breakfast, free lunches. We could have our meetings there. So Pascal's was Pascal's. And he was a businessman, in a way that Wilson's wasn't. Okay, so, but Pascal's had the birdcage. And so we would, Julian and other folks would go to see Martha and the Vandellas at the birdcage. And as serious as this was, given that, people, racists at every point were trying to kill us, what you had to keep your sanity. And so part of that was R&R, but it was also humor. So one of my big memories of Julian was at a party, and Julian and his brother James took broomsticks. Each of them had a broomstick, and they played as if this was a microphone. And they started doing the Temptation Walk and singing, My Girl is that Temptation? I'm pretty sure. Anyway, singing one of the major Temptation songs, and they would just keep, back and forth. And Julian knew all the words, I mean, as did James, actually, yeah. And Julian still is really, was still in, very much involved in, popular culture and R&B, and he just loved music, so, yeah, that was Julian.
And then Charles mentioned how music was a big part of the whole, because he was part of the Freedom Singers.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yes, so he was saying how that was sort of the glue that held a lot of things together, too, because it gave people courage at a lot of the events and marches and stuff. So can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, music was what kept us together and what gave us strength. I remember coming out after 5 days. We had been arrested in one of the demonstrations in Atlanta around public accommodations, and just feeling really, we had gone on a fast, energy was low. We had tried to keep it up with singing freedom songs in jail, because that was the other thing. They would separate the women from the men, and so sometimes you could hear each other. You would hear the guys singing, you would hear the women singing, back and forth, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. And we came out of that. And, personally, I was really hungry because we had been on a fast for 5 days, And so we come out and we came into this church. I don't remember what church it was. We came out into this church and it was packed. And people were singing, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. And we walked in, and physically you felt lifted up. You felt like nothing could stop you. Nobody could stop you. And it just filled you. Bernice Reagan, one of the freedom singers as well, SNCC freedom singers as well, said that when you were on a demonstration, the song was almost like the song came between you and the racists who were trying to get you. That in order to get to you, they had to come through that wall of sound that you were putting out there that said, you can't touch me. You can't touch me because I got this. And what it did was it really made you feel united with everybody else who was singing with you. And I got to say, I'm not churched, so it's not even, but it did something else. That power of that song took me somewhere else. And it was like it's like, you can't touch me. It was and you did the same thing when we were working in what we called the workroom. The perpetually dirty office also. Workroom, getting out press releases, getting out the student voice, getting out the research packets, getting out whatever. Always, when you stuff the envelopes, because of course, you have a mimeograph machine in the workroom and the envelopes have to be stuffed and you have to do, okay. While you're doing the work, you always sang freedom songs because it made the work go easier. I mean, I don't know how movements now, current movements, operate without song. And it has to be a certain kind of song. It has to be a song that absolutely pulls you together, and it's more than chants. There has to be a song, So yeah, song was amazing.
And where was the office that you guys were based out of?
Yeah, our office, our SNCC national office, was at 8.5 Raymond Street, 6 and 8.5 Raymond Street. Or 6.5 and Raymond. Anyway, 6. I think it's 6 and 8.5 Raymond Street, because we also had a print shop that was part of that, and so out of that teeny tiny little office, you had communications department, which was Julian and Mary King or Dottie Zellner, whoever was there. You had the little reception area in the front. Now I'm talking 63, 64. So whoever was there, Nancy Stearns, it might have been Jimmy Bolton. That would be if you move to the left, you would have Julian and communications. You would see, come on, Judy, Bobby Yancey. Bobby Yancey, who was right next door. Bobby Yancey becomes the number 2 person at the Schomburg Research Center in Harlem, but part of the library, New York Public Library. But at that point, she was head of, she was doing fundraising and also became part of the HBCU developing chapters. And then there would be the workroom, but then if you went to the right, you would get to Jim Foreman's office. I, as his secretary, was sitting right outside, in a teeny tiny little area. And then behind me was Dinky Romilly, who becomes his second wife. First wife was Mildred Foreman. Dinky is head of Northern Support. So she's doing all the chapters, all the Friends of SNCC and the campus Friends of SNCC all over the country and stuff at University of Chicago, NYU, UC Berkeley, wherever it was. And then, oh, and then Chessie. How could I forget? Cheselonia Johnson was our, off to the other side, on the other side, was the bookkeeper who tried to keep the books of this. I mean, nobody wanted to do receipts. You know, I mean, these are all organizers, and so they're being shot at, you know, all the time. So when Chessie would say, and Foreman would say, you're not going to get your little $10 a week, which was, of course, $9.64 after taxes, you're not going to get that until you send me the receipts for, you know, whatever we gave you the last time. Now, of course, first of all, they didn't get the $9.64 regularly anyway, so this was hardly, you know, a major problem, but it did help. So they would try and figure out, well, did I get the gas at so-and-so's little, you know, in some one-horse town? Did I get it here? And did I get a receipt? And, you know, but she was very serious about that, as was, Ruby Doris Smith Robinson. Oh, my gosh, who was the, she's larger than life, too, who had come out of the Atlanta student movement. I mean, she was on the Freedom Ride. She'd done, Ruby Doris Smith Robinson, when I'm at Swarthmore, and I'm going to, you know, demonstrations in Cambridge, Maryland, on the eastern shore of Maryland. And at that point, I'm just getting arrested down there, going back late to Swarthmore, and Penny Patch comes back from Southwest Georgia. She had taken off 6 months from Swarthmore. She hears that I'm getting arrested. She says to me, you should think about taking off the next semester, which would have been the first semester of my sophomore year. Take it off, work full-time for SNCC. But she says, if you want to do this, quote, you got to go by Ruby Doris. Now, it's only because I'm coming from the north. If you were part of the southern projects, you didn't go through applications and stuff, but I'm coming from the north, right? So she said, you know, this is how you get this. So I get this, I fill out the application, then it's the whole thing of which I won't go into, telling my mother. My mother had an 8th grade education, had never gone to college. I'm on full scholarship for 4 years, and I'm about to tell her that I'm gonna take off a semester from college. Okay, so, but I go ahead and apply, and then I get that I have been accepted.